My name is Michael Ennis. I'm the Transportation Director at WPC. Where do I begin with transportation issues on the east side? There are so many. Pulling 520, I-90, taking light rail across the bridge, Sound Transit East Link alignment in downtown Bellevue. There's so many things we can talk about. One of the eco-fads that Todd mentioned earlier is, right now everybody in this room drives on average about 35 miles per day. The state has a policy, which passed last year, to reduce how much you drive to 22 miles per day by 2035. Believe it or not. Now, there are no programs in place to implement that target. There were a bunch of bills this year to do so, through planning process, through mandating densities and forcing new development to meet some of these targets. The first target is an 18% reduction in how much you drive by 2020. What does that mean? There's been no analysis at the state level to show the effect of that target on state gas tax revenue. And it's quite obvious. The more you drive, the more gas you buy, the more the state brings in a gas tax revenue. The less you drive, the less gas you consume, the less the state brings in. So every legislator we've talked to was unaware of this effect. It's very obvious. So what we set out to do is do an analysis to show what the effect would be using the same methodology and the same numbers that the governor's climate action team used. And what we found is that the state is able to achieve their first target of an 18% reduction in driving by 2020. They would reduce state gas tax revenues by 10%, $1.5 billion. Why is that important? Because a majority of all of the gas tax projects from the gas tax that passed in 2003 and 2005 would be in jeopardy. The funding that's been set aside for the viaduct would be in jeopardy. The state funding side of it would be in jeopardy because that's exclusively gas tax revenue. So there's been no analysis to show the effect of reducing driving on state gas tax revenues. There are 4 bills left. Most of them died. There are 4 bills left that have moved forward that do include some form of a VMT reduction. VMT is vehicle miles traveled, how much you drive in a particular year. So we're continuing to track that, and we're continuing to try to inform legislators of the effect of reducing mobility on state gas tax revenues. Another point is the climate action team did recognize that state gas tax revenues are dwindling over time when you adjust for inflation. So what they recommend is a move to tolling to replace the state gas tax revenue. Now, if you think about it, there's a paradox there. Because if you have a policy that says you're going to reduce driving, but simultaneously adopt a revenue source that relies on driving, you're going to fail at one or the other. It's just like sin taxes. You impose a tax to affect a behavior. All of a sudden you get addicted to that new revenue, and the goal of reducing that type of behavior doesn't matter anymore. So that's what we think is going to happen if they're able to reach their VMT reduction targets, and I don't think they'll ever will. Second issue is the federal stimulus money in transportation. Will it create jobs? There is this blanket assumption from the White House that all state legislators are using. Every $1 million spent in the federal stimulus money for transportation projects will lead to 10 jobs. So the state has about $550 million statewide. The state portion is about $340 million, which translates, using that assumption, to about 4,000 jobs. There's no analysis to show, no methodology to back up the claim that that spending will lead to job creation. Some examples. The state list of projects that they're going to fund with that money funds 4 projects, half the money that is already funded from state gas tax revenues. The economic impact for those projects is already occurring. So all they're doing is using federal money to replace the state money, to free up, so they're able to use that money on the back end of projects that they don't have funding for. The problem with that is the federal stimulus money is meant to fund projects that are ready in the next 60 to 90 days. Those other projects aren't ready for 6 to 10 years from now. So they're not meeting the intent of the federal stimulus money, and the money that is being spent is not going to create any jobs. The rest of the projects are small repaving projects across the state. Important projects, they need to be done. The state doesn't have funding for them. But will they create jobs? No. The State Department of Transportation will be able to complete these projects with their own resources. Anything they can't do, they'll contract out to private organizations. Those employees will be temporary. All of those employees will be unemployed by the end of summer no impact on improving the unemployment rate in the state. So we tried to point this out. This idea was picked up by the Wall Street Journal, by Bloomberg News, the Seattle Times, and this morning we did an interview with CNN talking about this impact of using state revenue, or the federal stimulus, saying you're going to use the federal stimulus money in transportation to improve jobs. It simply won't happen, and there's been no analysis show that it will. I think everybody ended up on a positive note. I don't have a positive note. So I'll plug our dinner instead. Every year, the Transportation Center has an annual dinner. This year, it's being held at the Bellevue Hyatt on April 18th, and we've invited Dr. Sam Staley, who's the Urban Policy Director of Reason Foundation, to talk about how transportation policy should properly mix with land use policies. We see a lot of these bills proposed in the legislature to mandate density increases to affect transportation policies. And he's a nationally recognized expert in this area, so we thought it'd be important to have him come out and speak about this. If you're interested, I think there's packets on the table that has this invitation in it, and I encourage all of you to register for that.